Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vasante. Great of you. Appreciate the efforts you have taken. As the participants are trickling in, we can wait. Huh?
Okay, sir. Shall we start, sir?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, sir. Okay. So, good afternoon, all. On behalf of our English department, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to our respected principal, Dr. N. Muthumani ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am. It's my immense pleasure to welcome our esteemed resource person, Professor Raja Govindasamy, former principal, Tyagarajar College, Madurai. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Happy to welcome all the HODs and professors from various college and my dear colleagues. Welcome you all. Finally, my hearty welcome to all the research scholars and students from various college and our college for this wonderful session. Welcome you all. Before introducing, I would like to thank our resource person for accepting our invitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our resource person is an academic advisor and life skills trainer. He has been an English teacher for the past 45 years. He was the principal of Tyagarajar College, Madurai, and later director of Manna Thirumalai Naikar College, Madurai. He studied in India and America for his higher education. He is an internationally accredited trainer. He conducts English communication classes regularly to students, staff, and other professionals in business, industry, and public service. He has presented papers in English seminars. He has served as resource person for orientation and refresher courses sponsored by University Grants Commission for college teachers. He has been a resource person for Anna University sponsored faculty development programs for English teachers. He has also been conducting English programs to school and college staff and students regularly. He has interviewed two Indian poets in English, Kamala Das and Meena Alexander, for UGC's countrywide classroom program relayed in Doordarshan. With this, I invite our resource person to take over the session. Sir, the session is yours.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you, sir.
Good noon to all of you, fellow learners. There are teachers, students, but all of us keep learning. So I am happy to call all of you fellow learners. I appreciate the efforts of the Department of English of PPG College, Coimbatore. And I also thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk on English literature, social commitment. Can you see me and am I heard? Can you hear me also?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The purpose of literature is to sustain humanity at any cost. That's why Matthew Arnold said that currency and supremacy are ensured for good literature, for that matter, great literature. And he further said towards the end of his lecture, titled The Study of Poetry, which he delivered when he assumed the professorship of the University of Oxford, that literature will never lose supremacy because of the instinct of self-preservation in humanity. Interesting. The instinct of self-preservation in humanity. Even as we talk of the subject English literature, so many of us from India know of our own literatures in India as being much older and more classical than English literature. So we understand how our own literatures or literatures all over the world from time immemorial survive, sustain, and continue to enjoy supremacy and currency. They are not only classical, but they are contemporary in the sense that they impinge on our lives, in our thoughts and in our actions, because they have a certain social angle to whatever they have conveyed to us. And this instinct of self-preservation in humanity, in the kind of avid readers that we have been over so many years, that keeps us going. And it also contributes to our understanding of life. So I'm very happy about it. I'm very happy that this topic has been well chosen, and I readily agreed to speak on it because it's something that I have been all the time talking about in my career as an English teacher. Friends, when we speak of English literature as a social commitment, we could immediately remember Charles Dickens of the Victorian era. In novel after novel, he spoke of the social evils, the abuses inflicted upon children and orphans, and the kind of squalor that he saw around in London and other places, and did not fail to convey his displeasure and even satirize as he passes by in a number of his novels. So to begin with, I thought of referring to Charles Dickens's very huge novel, A Little Dalit. It's a huge novel running to several pages. And one of the chapters here is dealing with the science of the government. And it talks about the government department in the 19th century, in the Victorian era. I urge all of you listeners that even if you may not read the novel, at least read this particular chapter, in which he talks about the government office as circumlocution office. Because when the hero of the novel goes in search of information, he is first led into one office, to another office, to another office, and another office. And finally, he meets a few bureaucrats who also don't want to answer, but keep talking in terms of eloquence, but only empty words. So Dickens calls this circumlocution office, because you keep going round and round and never come to the center. At the end of it, he hopes to come back and somehow make an impression on the people as to what he needs. And finally, of course, he gets it done. But the circumlocution office is an indictment on the way in which things function in some of the public institutions. Today, we are much better with several media coming to our rescue, and also our own people in positions giving us the numbers and the addresses and other resources, recourses to which we can avail. So the circumlocution office, or the objective of that particular public department, government department, seems to be how not to be. And this is, of course, Dickens's several of the social commitments, and one of which I pointed to you before I proceed a little further on. And here I would like to show my slides for the next 35 minutes on, so that it will be easy for you to not only listen to me, but also see for yourself as to how I have culled out materials from several parts of English literature. So here we go. Let me start with the basics. All of us English teachers, as well as students of English literature, know of this very popular book by R.J. Rees, English Literature, An Introduction for Foreign Students. Let me expand it so that you get a full screen and proceed further. Just a moment. Is this visible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. The first chapter of this book is titled Why We Study Literature. And in this, R.J. Rees says, literature may be good, bad, or indifferent. Of course, there is the popular literature, there is the literature which deals merely with sensationalism. So literature may be good, bad, or indifferent, but good literature will have the same, if not all, of the following qualities. Psychological truth, or holding the mirror up to nature. Originality, craftsmanship, a consciousness of moral values. Naturally, the first one and the last one we will immediately keep in mind. Holding the mirror up to nature and its moral consciousness. I hope it's better now for all of you. And let me proceed. On that basis, keeping in mind our topic, English literature, a social commitment. And that's why it has a moral consciousness, and that's why it holds the mirror up to nature. Through its plot, through its characterizations, through its theme. So the Aristotelian view considers literature as a source of insight about human life. What's the other word for insight? Or the opposite of that will be opinion. So many of us are opinionated because of generalizations that we're used to, because of a partial understanding of life. So instead of opinion, you need to have insight, and literature is a source of insight into human life. The importance of literature is linked to the significance of human life itself, which is why Matthew Arnold said literature is a criticism of life. Any poem is not a great poem if it does not answer the question how to live. Or when you read literature, what does it take you on to? It takes you from chaos and confusion to sweetness and light. I'm quoting from Matthew Arnold again, from chaos and confusion to sweetness and light. And so the importance of literature is linked to the significance of human life itself. Therefore, to study the connection between literature and society, while we read poems, plays, and novels on their own merits as works of art is our major task. Apart from reading them as works of art, we need to see the connection between literature and society. As you read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, you not only understand the social history of New England, but you also come to understand what it is that gnaws at the heart of Roger Chillingworth, Hester Prynne, and many others with regard to the sin. So you're trying to connect literature with society. Let me proceed a little further. I thought, even as we think of English literature, let us understand English literature in translation as well from an Indian background. I hope any one of you among the audience, other than teachers, one of you may unmute or with the help of the host will tell me which is this famous Tamil poem. It has such a strong social commitment. Every town, our hometown, every man a kinsman. Good and evil do not come from others. Pain and relief of pain come of themselves. Dying is nothing new. We do not rejoice that life is sweet, nor in anger call it bitter. Our lives, however dear, follow their own course. Rafts drifting in the rapids of a great river, sounding and dashing over the rocks after a downpour, from skies slashed by lightnings. We know this from the vision of men who see. These are the seers, the poets. So, we are not amazed by the great, and we do not scorn the little. This is a translation by A.K. Ramanujan, and any among you students, I'm asking, research scholars, I'm asking, is this translation familiar to you? Anybody among us? Very plain. Now, teachers can come to the students and scholars' rescue too.
Yadum Ure Yavarum Kelir.
Teacher or a student, please?
Student.
Student. From where are you speaking? Coimbatore or elsewhere?
From St. Joseph Women's College.
At St. Joseph Women's College at?
Jolarpet.
Congratulations and thank you. What's your name?
Jivita.
Jivita, thank you very much. Yadum Bure, Yavarum Kerlir, Tidum Nandrum,
ஒன்றும் பிறர் தர
Piradharavara. Unto the end, அதனால பெரியவரை கண்டு பயப்படுறதும் வேண்டாம், இகழ்தலும் வேண்டாம். Great. I appreciate you for this. What a great poem of universal meaning with a strong social commitment as to how we should conduct ourselves. Great. Thank you very much. That's why I thought of beginning with this and then proceed. As you read literature, ladies and gentlemen, you understand that literature focuses on 6 aspects: race, class, gender, language, religion, and environment. Let me repeat: race, class, gender, language, religion, environment. Naturally, you understand how literature is steeped in its social commitment. Good literature, great literature, with its ability to hold the mirror up to nature and with a strong moral consciousness. This is Toni Morrison, African-American woman novelist, and her novel Tar Baby. In the very opening chapter, Toni Morrison, even as she is concerned about the sufferings and struggles and abuses of Afro-Americans in the US, she talks to us about the environmental damage. And we have a special section called eco-criticism now. And eco-critics could as well go to this particular chapter and find out as to how she is so unhappy about Southern America, full of the Amazon forest and being denuded, and the environmental damage that's happening. The end of the world, as it turned out, was nothing more than a collection of magnificent winter houses on Isle de Chevalier. All these places have now become winter houses, resorts. When laborers imported from Haiti came to clear the land, such lush, dark, dense, the lovely, dark and deep, the woods. Clouds and fish were convinced that the world was over, that the sea green, green of the sea, and the sky blue, blue of the sky were no longer permanent, because there is such a depletion of natural resources. Toni Morrison, remember. I'm continuing the same paragraph. Wild parrots that had escaped the stones of hungry children in Queen of France, another part, agreed and raised havoc as they flew away to look for yet another refuge. Now that it's being peopled, and now that it's being denuded of the forests and concrete jungles are coming up, what happened? The parrots wanted to seek refuge elsewhere. Only the champion daisy trees were serene. After all, they were part of a rainforest already 2,000 years old and scheduled for eternity. So they ignored the men and continued to rock the diamondbacks that slept in their arms. The diamondbacks are the birds. And still they believed that it will not be damaged further. And there was the river about which Matthew Arnold speaks of in The Scarlet Gypsy. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. I'm sorry, this comes from Spencer. Sorry. It took the river to persuade them, the forests, the woods, the long trees, the tall trees, that indeed the world was altered, that never again would the rain be equal because of the climatic change. And by the time they realized it and had run their roots deeper, clutching the earth like lost boys found, it was too late. The trees had been felled. The men had already folded the earth where there had been no fold. I mean, they simply wound up the whole thing and damaged the environment and hollowed her where there had been no hollow. which explains what happened to the river, what happened to the birds, and what happened to the trees, and now what happened to the river. What happened to the river? It crested, then lost its course and lost its head, evicted from the place where it had lived and forced into unknown turf. It could not form its pools or waterfalls and ran every which way so that it could glide on and reach the sea. The clouds gathered together, stood still, and watched the river scuttle around the forest floor, crash headlong into the haunches of hills with no notion of where it was going, until exhausted, ill and grieving, it slowed to a stop just 20 leagues short of the sea. It had become a pool, stagnant place, and it's now dirty, polluted, and it couldn't reach the sea, a privilege it had enjoyed for 2,000 years. Now, this is nothing new for us in our country too, or any part of the world too, which is why, as you read literature, and when you remember its social commitment, Toni Morrison, even as she speaks of racial abuse, couldn't ignore how the environment has been abused. And this novel was written about 30 years ago. So here is the social commitment that you find in a literary piece, and we can go a little further now. So when this damage has been done, you suddenly recall two lines from William Wordsworth, who, as he enjoys the natural phenomena and sees the birds, clouds, everybody is so happy. Have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? Whether it is of the conflict that results in violence against one with the other, or the violence against nature, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? That's it. Of course, even as you remember Toni Morrison and Wordsworth and a colleague of Wordsworth on the other side of the Atlantic, Henry David Thoreau, and in his famous book, Where I Lived and What I Lived For, he says, I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, the romantic notion of plain living and high thinking. Or as you read the preface to the lyrical ballads, Wordsworth says, the human mind can be ameliorated by simple poems and not by German tragedies and other crime novels or thrillers. Amelioration of one's own self. And what happened to Thoreau as he ameliorated himself, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach the woods. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. I could not learn what it had to teach. Even today, as you go to your doctor for a highly stressed condition, the doctor says, go out, leave your mobile phones, just observe nature for more than an hour, listen to the birds twittering, ignore your Twitter, and then get back with a fresh lease of life. And this is the prescription, no medicine. So I went into the woods in order to learn the essential facts of life, to see if I could not learn what it had to teach. And Wordsworth says in the poem, Up, up, my friend, and pick your books. One impulse from a vernal wood can teach me more of morals than all the sages can. So that when I came to die, I discovered that I had not lived. And there is a famous popular verse. I was dying to go to school so that I can go to college. Then I was dying to go to job so that I can marry. Then I was dying to have children so that I can send them to school. So I was all through my life dying, meaning always stressed for next level of progress. And now I am dying. And suddenly I realized I had never lived at all. So now you understand the popular poem and Thoreau's statement, I did not wish to live what was not live, living is so dear, nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. What a comfort in plain living and high thinking. Well, environment. Let's go one step further from environment to a certain celebration of brotherhood and nationalism in the poem by Robert Frost, or in a poem in Gitanjali, where the mind is without fear and the head held high, and the poem ending with the statement, into the heaven of freedom, O my Lord, let my country awake. Here he talks about the Britishers who had come settled here, and they were, even for a long time until they took up the cause of this own country, still colonials. The land was ours before we were the land's. She was our land more than 100 years before we were her people. She was ours in Massachusetts, in Virginia, but we were England's. Still colonials, possessing what we still were unpossessed by, possessed by what we now no more possessed. Something we were withholding made us weak until we found that it was ourselves we were withholding from our land of living. The nationalist spirit that led to the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776. And what happened? The moment we realized we are not colonials or non-resident Englishmen living here, and forthwith found salvation in surrender, such as we were, we gave ourselves outright and became Americans, and the rest is history. This is something that Frost loved, which he read at the inauguration of Robert Kennedy's presidency. So here is the commitment of the person, the national spirit that comes into it, but it has its own trouble. All this national spirit, your European Americans or Europeans settled in Americans, the way a lot of Asian Americans have gone, the way the African Americans who you all brought as slaves and prospered in the southern plantations and elsewhere. So the kind of equality that you had pronounced in your constitution, could you honor, was the question of the Afro-Americans and even by the women who looked for their own voting power, etc. So here I am showing you one from an actual incident of George Floyd, whose anniversary went by last week, and how this police officer is severely thrashing him. And what does this fellow say? Please, officer, I can't breathe. But the fellow died. This is racial abuse. And the class, the poor house in England, this is, please, sir, I want some more. Other than Jivita, anybody else who knows this familiar statement? Can the subaltern speak? And he does speak, and what happens? Blows and a dismissal and confinement to a dark room and the escapade to London and all the difficulties for this boy. Please, sir, I want some more. Please, sir, I want some more. And I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for all these orphans who need more. And what does it convey to you? All over the world, people who are in distress, children, women, elders, all others, people of several races too, always ask for what? Some voice and some space. That's it. Some voice and space. Please listen to me. Please let me also exist somewhere. Please, sir, I want some more. Can somebody unmute a student? If not a student, a fellow learner, the teacher, or the scholar. I'm waiting. Hello. Please, sir, I want some more. It's a very familiar scene. Mr. Bumble is the chief, and this is the man in charge of the boarding house, the poor house. He and his wife, who is a shrew, and what happens is a very familiar story. Please, sir, I want some more.
Sir, Oliver Twist by
Oliver
Dickens.
Twist, Charles Dickens. Yes, this is Oliver asking. Right, you're right. Thank you. Who is the speaker?
Sir, Deepika, sir, from PPG College.
Deepika from where?
Sir, PPG College, sir.
PPG College. I know you would have read this in your school also in abridged form.
Yes, sir.
Very glad. I'm happy you recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deepika. I'm happy.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very happy. This is what he did. When you read Victorian novels, you come across a variety of orphans in Wuthering Heights, in Jane Eyre, in Pickwick, in Great Expectations, in Oliver Twist, or in the famous novel by George Eliot, Middlemarch, Will Ladisla, the orphan. Orphans in Victorian fiction, a major concern of the novelists, both in Wuthering Heights and in Jane Eyre and in the other two novels I referred to. What are they looking for? Some space and some voice. And these authors, Charles Dickens and George Eliot, contemporaries who are realist authors themselves, gave voice to these people. And that's how we understood the social commitment. Though Dr. F.R. Lewis did not put Dickens in the slot of novelists with great tradition, he said Jane Austen inaugurates it, George Eliot, Henry James, Joseph Conrad, D.H. Lawrence. That's how he classifies, because of their concern for certain moral value. Fine. So this is race to class. And then, of course, this is gender. What happens to this woman? Does this this is a famous American drama of a character who suffers a lot, and especially in the hands of her sister's husband. And, she says at the end of the drama, "I have always enjoyed the kindness of strangers," and so she goes with the doctor. Yes, please. Somebody, I believe, has opened up. Who is this speaker? Who is this character? Which is the drama? The drama popularized into a very popular movie too.
Streetcar Desire, I think so, sir.
Yes, Streetcar. Yes, you're right. You don't have to think so. You think right. May I know who is speaking?
So this is Vigneshwaran from PPG College of Engineering Technology, PPG Institute of Technology, sorry.
Technology. You have read
Yes,
Streetcar Named Desire, or you see the son in the movie?
So Streetcar Desire, I think so.
Right, you're right. You're right. Did someone
Thank you,
prompt you, or you have heard of this drama? Very glad.
Yes,
This lady comes after being bruised on several counts to her sister, and finds a ruin in Stanley Kowalski, her sister's husband, and she keeps herself to the room, and around the lamp she fixes a paper so that she says, "I don't want realism. I only want the illusion of realism. I want magic, because reality has been too harsh to me. I've suffered a lot under men." And she meets with her tragedy in this home too, and taken to a lunatic asylum, a mental hospital, sorry. So this is what happens to a lot of very vulnerable women, and they have always been vulnerable. And so I was trying to identify for you as to how in literature, I'm giving you only a few samples. All of you here, scholars, senior teachers, and who are better than me, know of several instances of literary pieces from all genres which focus on social commitment in terms of race, class, gender, language, religion, environment. And I gave a big sample of environmental concern in Toni Morrison's novel. Fine, let's proceed a little further. This is a contemporary writer. All his problem all through is, even now for this Afro-American, is somehow you must survive, because the white supremacy continues to do that. Americans believe in the reality of race as a defined, indubitable feature of the natural world. Racism, the need to ascribe bone-deep features to people and then humiliate, reduce, and destroy them, inevitably follows from this inalterable. And yet there have been measures by the government and one or two presidents who have been trying to kind of balance this inequality, but the struggle continues. He's a contemporary writer, and Between the World and Me is a kind of a message to his son, so that at any cost he must survive against police brutality or any other form of coercion and threat and suppression. And I hope many other authors ring in your mind as you speak of it, and as you also keep remembering this famous expression, can the subaltern speak? And they do, amidst struggle, suffering, and great loss. I thought of referring to this novel by Julius Lester. This is, you all have been familiar with short story in translation under the title Elizabethan Love Tragedies, from which Shakespeare, of course, took from source of which Shakespeare took the material for his drama. And this is a 20th century short novel. I bought it in an old bookshop a few years ago. Very interesting to read. And the author, Julius Lester, an English professor, sets the novel in London with a king. And you know, the radical departure that he makes, it's the black African against another black African, the hero, Othello. So the most radical departure from the play was my decision to make Iago and his wife Emilia African. If race was going to be more central in the novel, and it was, Iago could not be white because his jealousy might stereotype him as a racist only. After all, it's common that a white man against a black. I found it more interesting to explore racist feelings in black person, which is why some of the women, the Afro-American women, say we all suffer double jeopardy. Number one, the white supremacy. Number two, the black male chauvinist feeling that thinks that we are not equal to them. And here is a man against a fellow black person. And it's a very interesting novel to read. The same plot, the same end, but only this twist. And all through the novel, you find the king is upset that the daughter Desdemona has run away with this man who is not a white man. And there is this fellow Iago who has this motiveless malignity. And here is this malignity that crops up because he, as a black person, cannot accept somebody going up in hierarchy. Fine. I'm only trying to show you instances, fragments of how the novelists and the poets and the dramatists are concerned about the way in which the society is very often exposed, and how these characters continue to brave and then suffer or succeed. Fine. Now I'm coming back to Subramania Bharati, because if you go to the Indian bibliography of essayists in English, you find Agni and other poems and other essays of Subramania Bharati in this bibliography. And I have seen, I have a copy of that book containing about 30 essays in English, which Subramania Bharati wrote. Many of you may not know that Bharati was an English writer for The Hindu, a columnist, and he translated poems of Nammalvar, Andal, and Arunagarinadar. And these are poets of the Bhakti tradition, and he also translated a few poems of his own, especially Agni Homam, he translated himself. So this is A small passage from his essay, The Place of Woman. What a social commitment. You know of it, because all of us from Tamil Nadu, most of us from Tamil Nadu. I see, interestingly, there is a group of participants from Punjab itself. Very welcome, very warm welcome to all of them. Look at this statement. When you, as you read the first statement, you remember Shakespeare's play, The Taming of the Shrew. And here it says, civilization is the taming down of man by woman. So the husbandry is managed by the woman. Men indeed have till now been trying with scant success to civilize one another by means of the sword and the bullet, the prison cell, the gibbet and the rack. But it has been the lot of women to have no other weapon than fables, parables and symbols in her work of civilizing man. Beautiful. And this is the commitment of an author, of a thinker from Tamil Nadu, a progressive thinker who thought it's my job to advocate among my people as to the significance of woman and the place that she richly deserves. And here is a small English literary piece in which he focuses so much on what he had been focusing in Tamil, in the poems, in the essays that he had written at that time. Fine, let's move ahead. Not to stop with that, Lucille Clifton, Afro-American woman poet, identifying the black image with Kali, the Indian goddess. Kali, queen of fatality. She determines the destiny of things. Nemesis. She won't let you go. The permanent guest within ourselves. And when you have the righteous anger as an African-American woman or man, male who suffers the suppression, the permanent guest within ourselves, you suddenly take the avatar. Woman of warfare, of the chase, witch of blood sacrifice and death, dread mother, the mystery ever present in us and outside us, the terrible Hindu woman god Kali, who is black. Lucille Clifton, trying to understand black majesty, black righteousness, to fight and to succeed, and what? We know over then, trying to, coming all the way from the US to India for this myth. Very interesting poem by Lucille Clifton, Afro-American woman poet of Esther years. This is another interesting essay, another interesting short story, The Man to Send Rain Clouds. This is a story about native Indians, the Red Indians as we call them. Written in 1967 and published 2 years later, The Man to Send Rain Clouds established Silko, the writer, is a brilliant new Native American writer. The story brought her wide recognition as well as a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. All through our lives, we knew only English literature or British literature as English literature. Then we started reading American literature. Thereafter, we started reading African American, Australian, Canadian, Singaporean, Bangladesh, Pakistan, several other Asian and African literatures. And now there came about in the 60s also an interest in Native American literature. This is an interesting story, The Man to Send Rain Clouds. The story is based on an incident Silko had heard about in her hometown, Laguna, New Mexico. An old man had been found dead in a sheep camp and had been given a traditional Indian burial. The local Catholic priest resented the fact that he had not been called in to officiate at the service. Silko's story explores the Indians' blending of Catholic rituals with traditional Indian rituals during a funeral ceremony. The tension of maintaining a traditional Pueblo practices and the co-opting of outside influence, in this case the Catholic Church is a recurring interest of Silko's and appears in several of her stories. They go to the church and say, "Sir, before we bury our man according to Indian practice, our own practice, please do your own service in the church so that he can have a blessing. And this is the man who, when he goes to heaven, will send us the rain clouds." There is the merging of two faiths, the Catholic faith and the native Indian faith. Interesting story of the kind of multicultural belief. What a commitment that artists of this kind convey to us, that we need to enjoy this spirit in a secular form. Fine. I'm coming to the end. Let me skip this and go to a native sample. All of you from Coimbatore know Kasturi Srinivasan, who was the great man who developed the CITRA, Southern India Textile Research Association, which you see in Pelamedu. And adjoining it is this Kasturi Srinivasan's art gallery. He studied textile technology in England, married Barbara, the English lady, and then they all settled in Coimbatore. He wrote novels, he wrote essays, he translated Tirukural. He continued to be a great creative writer, even amidst his preoccupation with technology, because he was chairman of the National Textiles Corporation. So for those students from PPG College of Coimbatore, here is a local sample, The Light from Heaven, a novel published by Penguin many years ago. I met his wife about 20 years ago when she was in Coimbatore. We had an interview with her, and she was, of course, an artist. She drew a lot. And when you go to this art gallery in Pelamedu, near the airport, you will be able to, adjacent to the Citra office, you'll be able to see all the artworks and the creative outputs of Kasturi Srinivasan. This is an interesting novel, which he translated under the title Anbe Nam Ayudam. The novel focuses on one theme, which he conveys at the end of the novel through the hero. That is the fatherhood of God and brotherhood of man. This is what life is all about. Fatherhood of God and brotherhood of man is what he preaches. Here is a Brahmin boy who renounces his caste because he finds that the upper class people have always ignored the other classes, and so he deliberately becomes a chakliya and becomes a cobbler, and later joins the municipality in an unknown place as a sanitary worker, and he marries a girl of this particular caste, and her name is Lachi, which is a corrupt form of Lakshmi, and this is Balan, and a rival who is a suitor to Lachi kills Balan in a fight, and before that he has become a myth or legend in that area as a cleaner of latrines, as somebody who is an advocate for these oppressed classes, and all that happens until he dies, and his wife takes on the mission. And this is the mission that she carries on with her son, a baby. And the mission is simple: fatherhood of God and brotherhood of man. White Dalit is a very recent novel published last year. Chennai, this is a very interesting satire of the caste system, of something that happens to a scheduled caste boy in Kadalur district, and what happens and how many people in the name of human rights exploit him, and how he comes out of it thanks to right-minded people who wean him away from trouble and who also make him a very proactive boy as a college student. As we come to the end of our presentation, because there could be a lot of women students too, Vaya Robin is a very popular story of Sashi Deshpande. She lives in Bengaluru. She wrote a lot of essays and short stories, apart from many novels. This is a very interesting short story, Vaya Robin. A girl marries at a very young age, and she gets a girl baby, and the father and the daughter make fun of the mother because she is not educated. And only when she attains puberty, the girl joins the mother, and together they became close to each other. And the mother does not take her sweet revenge on her because she had slighted her earlier. And here is how the coming together of two minds, how there is a mentor and a mentee, and there is somebody who can guide her, because there are a lot of menstrual issues and health issues what only she can talk to her mother, and the emotional bondage that comes of it. And the mother had earlier asked her, "Mother, I want an assignment to be written. Why a robin?" She says, "Why not a myna? Why not a kurvi or anything else?" But now they come together. Beautiful story in which the novelist tries to tell us of how the young girl and the mother, and though they are different in age groups, how they could come together. Stories of this nature, wherein two women are involved, convey to us as to how there is this social issue too. Now that I have come to the end almost, this is the poem written in 2017, and it's in prose form. I wrote a poem for dude at the bus stop, for a friend at the bus stop, because we can't be taking too much time. It may be 2 lines, 5 lines. "Oh, you can't talk, ma? Words to make the body inside my body less invisible. Words to teach my sister how to brew remedies in her mouth, so that when she quotes from these poems, I will feel happy. Words that grow mama's hair back. Words because she has undergone chemotherapy. So inspiring words. Words to detangle the kitchen. I won't write poems unless they are an instruction manual, a bus card, a warm sheer butter on my elbows, the dry elbows, water, a finger massage to the scalp, a broomstick sometimes used, and for cleaning and sometimes to soar. You know, the witches have the broomstick to soar high, so to sometimes to soar. This is what she says. So I will come to the end now. I have taken you through poems and some prose pieces and fiction from India, from US, from England too. And now I've come to a poem written towards the end of the Second World War. Louis MacNeice, contemporary of W.H. Auden, Stephen Spender, and many others. He came to Mahabalipuram one day. Louis MacNeice, very interesting poem. And he spent one full day. And he wrote a long poem. And I'm quoting the last lines only. And he saw the lingam. He was so amazed how in a single large stone, so much of the myths have been carved, including a small mouse, which is also doing a penance, as if mocking the man who is doing a penance there with one leg, what the mouse is doing. All these he graphically details. It's such a visual treat, like the Ode on a Grecian Urn by Keats, or this Musée de Beaux-Arts by W.H. Auden. On looking at this museum, this poem, this wooden painting, the painting by W.H. Auden, his comment on this art, or Keats on the urn, and here is Mahabalipuram, the great shore temple. So he spent one whole day and he was feeling tired. And so at the last point he says, but the visitor must move on. But the visitor must move on because he has other things to do. Reminding you of what Frost said, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have miles to go before I sleep, and promises to keep, etc., etc. But the visitor must move on. And the waves assault the temple. Waves coming as far from the Australian sea. That's how he quotes the poem. What is it? Living granite against dead water. For several centuries, these waves have been dashing against this living granite. It's not a stone, nor is the linga or any other features of the Hindu mythology there dead. They are alive, living granite against dead water. Look at the paradox in that line. And time with its weathering action make phrase and feature blurred. Still, from today, we know what an avatar is. What these myths are, that one sculptor, under the patronage of several kings of the Pallava regime, could do all these and give us a world which is the one thing that sustains us under stress. Still, from today, we know what an avatar is. We have seen God take shape and dwell among shapes. We have felt our aging limbs respond to those ageless limbs in the rock. All those features, all through standing, carved beautifully by an artist with a vision, with a spiritual inclination. Our aging limbs, as we go as visitors and inspired and enjoy a moment of spirituality there, our aging limbs respond to those ageless limbs in the rock reliefs, rock reliefs. You call it the 3-dimension, the projection in either metal or in stone relief. And so what happens to you at the end of watching and observing closely and recalling to your mind all that these avatars stood for, visualizing for yourself and feeling a sense of relief and resilience. And so the rock reliefs give me relief. Yes, relief is the word. And now you also got relief. And you can say, like King Lear, for this relief, much thanks. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Participants, any questions to ask, sir?
Thanks. I see in the chat boxes references to my presentation. Thank you very much. I had not planned it to be a critical activity because there are many students. And so giving samples of varieties of literary works which convey to you of the commitment of the author is what I tried to do. I hope I conveyed my message. Thank you. Vasanthi, I hope I stuck to the time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, participants?
Yes, disagreements. Thank you. Great. There's one novel that came last year. I read it during the first wave of Corona, Rumble in a Village. It's a very beautiful novel, which I strongly recommend. It's available, of course, in the market through Amazon. I got it that way. It talks about what happens in a village. Anil Singh, a banker in London, returns to the UP village because the uncle has been dead and he finds he's been murdered. And then it leads on to a lot of mazes and mazes of complications, and he tries to understand caste, class, race, all the struggles, and all these beautifully done by two economists who have written this novel. So here is a novel with a social commitment published in November last year, The Rumble in a Village. Luc Leroux. Even the name is difficult to pronounce. Thanks to lockdown, I could read these novels. Yes, please. And if there isn't any, I think they're ready for the lunch.
So good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
This is Valarmati, a government school teacher, sir.
Very glad. Thank you.
Sir, thank you, sir. Just a wonderful presentation you have given.
Thank
At the
you.
back, I could see a lot of books at the back of you. It seems you are a voracious reader.
Not a voracious reader, but I read.
Yes. No, sir. When I saw that those books, I could feel that I have miles to go to reach you.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too
no,
have
sir.
miles to go. All of us have
Yes.
milestones to reach. Huh?
Yes, sir. And you have given such a wonderful presentation. All your explanations are so good. And
Thank
you have given examples from Toni Morrison to Bharatiyar. So exemplary. Thank you so much, sir.
Please read Bharati in English as well.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Valarmadi. If there are students who would like to ask me, we can spend a minute or more. Otherwise, as Vasanthi feels. I want to thank the college, the principal, Dr. Muthamani, Vasanthi, and all of you, the people who must be behind this technical work, the Google Classroom opportunity, etc. Thank all of you participants and many of you teachers, scholars, research guides, and others who have joined out of interest in English literature with a strong social commitment. Thank you so much. And when you read, I just forget for a moment. It's okay, leave it.
Vasanthi ma'am, shall I go with vote of thanks?
Okay. I invite Mrs. Deepika, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good noon, all. It's my privilege and honor to propose vote of thanks on this knowledgeable webinar titled English Literature, a Social Commitment. On behalf of the Department of English, I extend my sincere and hearty thanks to the hero of the day, our esteemed guest, Professor R. Raja Govindasamy, Principal Retired, Tyagaraja College, Madurai, for accepting our invitation and make this day a memorable one. You made the session very interesting and thought-provoking. We are all inspired and learned by your great words, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I express my deep sense of thanks to our beloved principal, Dr. N. Muthamani ma'am, for her entire support and guidance to us. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to acknowledge my gratitude to our management for permitting us to organize such a wonderful program. Thank you. I would like to express my grateful to Head, Department of English, Mrs. V.K. Vasanthi ma'am, for her support and encouragement to organize this webinar. Thank you, ma'am. I express my applause and thanks to Mr. V. Ratanakumar, Head, Department of Mathematics, and Dr. S. Harikrishnan, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, for their involvement and technical support to organize this event. Thanks much, Ratanakumar and Harikrishnan.
Very good. Thanks to all those who have sent the messages in the chat box too. Pavitra, thank you. Looking forward to listening to you again. Shobana and all others, thank you. Thank you so much.
I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the participants from various colleges for your patience and active listening. Thank you all for sparing your time with us. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Shall we leave?
Sir.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you.